My background is I'm the son of two Rwandan immigrants that moved to America in the early 90s. Both my parents are not in, well, my dad is involved in tech, but when he first came to America, his goal was to get into agriculture. And he was going to study at the U of M here in Minnesota and get his degree and then go back to Rwanda and become a farmer. He's from a family of farmers. So that is like the what I am and who I am as far as family and upbringing. Um, Through that, my introduction to kind of computers and into tech kind of comes from my love for music first. So when I was in high school, I spent a lot of my time on the family computer downloading different programs like Ableton, Mixcraft, and different plugins, and torrenting songs, and basically just junking up their computer and made it my own. And it was all to like make music and program and engineer songs was like my introduction to like really loving my computer and using it as a tool. And as I mentioned, my father came to America to study agriculture, but along his way, he also got introduced to computers. So I remember a lot of my time watching him. He works in the firewall security space. So I remember watching him spend many sleepless nights studying for like the CISSP and other security certifications, and really just like having these stacks of books and certifications. And he was even involved in like network security. So at our home, in his office, he had this rack of servers and routers. I can't even count how many. They were big enough. They were bigger than me. And he was learning how to work the switching and routing of these routers within the network system that he was working at. And I just thought it was so fascinating. And I would ask him questions about it. And there was even one time I messed around a little too much and thought I was him and started playing with those switches and didn't realize the ramifications of it. And that wasn't a very fun night, but that was kind of what got me the itch to explore tech and computers and start to understand how to use them as a tool. Fast forwarding to college, I actually didn't study music or computer science. I actually studied finance. And the reason for that was I was good at numbers and I was good at English, which is like writing here in America. And the best transition as far as like where I was thinking I could maybe be and going into college was to major in business, but then you got to like find your niche within business. So I chose finance as my primary focus with the intention to maybe one day become an investment banker was the goal starting off. And thankfully, I had several mentors, and through the investment club that I helped run the kind of events and coordination of, got introduced to so many people in that space, and it opened my eyes to like the reality of what it means to work in investment banking. So I think I dodged that bullet as far as like work-life balance, and just it wasn't going to be the perfect fit for me. So I pivoted from going that route, and in my sophomore year of college, I had an internship at the Federal Reserve, which is, there's 13 Federal Reserve banks in America. I worked at the Minneapolis one as an intern doing like digital transformation. And when I say digital transformation, it was at a time when they had meeting memos and timestamps from previous Federal Reserve meetings that happened dating back to like, 1950s, 1960s, early mid 1900s. And my job was to scan them, get them onto our digital platform. And I kind of got introduced to, that was like another stepping stone into where I'm at and where I've gotten to be right now. And then that was an internship along the way in college. And then I had another internship at KPMG, which is a Big4 consulting firm, global consulting firm, working in advisory, tax, and accounting. And I somehow found my way into in office hours. So in America, when you're in college, the big thing is like to get internships so that once you're out of school, you can have a full-time job and hopefully somewhere you like, and hopefully in a position where you can continue to grow. So KPMG was coming to school, and I just said, why not just show up to the office hours and see what they have to say about the company, and maybe hopefully find an internship for the summer. And I was talking to the recruiter, and she mentioned that, they're pretty much full for this cycle of interns, but there is one opening in the SAP GRC team. When she said that, I was super excited, smile on my face, had no idea what SAP was, had no idea what GRC was, but I was like, I'm interested. Here's my resume. And thankfully, shout out to that recruiter, she took it to like the directors and all that, and ended up having like an interview, and ended up getting an internship at KPMG in the SAP GRC team. A little context to what SAP and GRC are. SAP is a business process system that is used widely globally for Fortune 500 companies, and even a little bit more mid-tier companies that are pretty mature for their business processes interacting with IT, that basically run all their functions from inventory to accounts payable to accounts receivable. So that's what I got exposure to as an intern, and ended up being a pretty good fit, and segued that into a full-time role once I got out of college. And then I was there at KPMG working in that team, and my task and role within that team was working in IT audits. So that's like control testing for these companies. You basically have to become a subject matter expert really, really fast. I was working with companies in pharmaceutical, technology, retail, you name it. That's kind of like the beauty of working in like Big4 consulting, is you get exposure to all those industries really fast, and you have to kind of be an expert, not only of the industry, but then take it a layer deeper, their technology and their systems. So that's what I did for about 4 years, specializing in SAP and then all the other systems that they interact with, and testing those, documenting them, walking through, and leading that. So I was there for 4 years. And then my last year, that's when I transitioned to working in the crypto assets team at KPMG, where we worked with fintech companies on transitioning them and helping them understand the crypto ecosystem and understand the risk and controls around that and the frameworks to hopefully build out their practices related to crypto. So I was in my last year at KPMG, and along the way there, in that last year, I stumbled upon a YouTube thumbnail that said Web3 security, and it was from an ETH Denver presentation. And you can go and find this on YouTube. It still exists, and it was one of the co-founders, Spencer McDonald, giving a first presentation and iteration of what is Spearbit. And the whole time, fireworks were going off in my head, because I was like, wow, I'm doing this in kind of the Web 2 world, and it was so interesting to me to hear, and exciting to me to hear that they're doing this in Web 3 and they're thinking about this. And the approach that the Spearbit team had to solving this was fresh, and I was super interested, and that's how I kind of segued into being a part of Spearbit. And that core team, and transitioning full-time to being in the Web3 space.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. So you actually discovered Web3 through a video that you watched during your time working at KPMG, is that right?
I discovered Web3 security through that YouTube video. So taking another step back, there are probably like two main points that I can, as I reflect, that I got like introduced to Web3 and the broader crypto ecosystem. So while I was in college, I had a roommate and teammate that we played football together at S.A. Thomas, and this was 2015, 2016, and he was a big gamer. So he played a lot of Destiny and PlayStation and Xbox games. So I think a lot of the concepts when it comes to crypto really clicked for him really early, and he would just chill to me about ETH and about Bitcoin. And as I mentioned, I was a finance guy, and I was in college, and so many other things you get caught up in. I just didn't have the time, or even just like the mental fortitude to be like to see the vision with him at that point. So that was like the first wave that I missed in 2015, 2016 would have been a great time to get into crypto, but it is what it is. And then while working at KPMG, I really realized a use case for it when working with these Fortune 500 companies and seeing how archaic their systems are. There's not really a great reason besides there's not really a great reason for having 5 different systems working your inventory or managing your accounts receivable. I think that doesn't really make sense. I think it can be more consolidated and definitely more agile. So I got aware to that, and just seeing how archaic it was opened my eyes to like, okay, there has to be a better solution to some of these pain points that I'm really going through and seeing these clients go through. So that's when I started getting into blockchain from a technology standpoint and seeing its use cases. Thankfully, I also had a coworker that was also kind of going down this route at the same time as me. So me and him would like share resources, share links, share different things we're learning about to better ourselves, because we're just curious and we just wanted to figure out how we could provide solutions to our clients if they were willing. So having to understand these complex systems and the dependencies also opened my eyes to the use cases for blockchain technology, and opened my eyes to what is Web3, what is crypto.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to me, actually. I missed the boat a couple of times to get into crypto, and it wasn't until I sort of got more exposed to the traditional cybersecurity side of things and approached crypto from a security perspective. It was only at that point where it sort of opened my eyes and I found it really interesting. So it's really cool to hear your experiences was pretty similar to that at a Big 4 auditing firm.
Yeah, and it sometimes feels like I remember, like, especially that second time that I got like really dived in and brought back to my attention, I almost thought I missed the wave too. I was like, oh, this already kind of taken off and booming. There can't be anything I can maybe add to this, right? But there's a phrase I've heard very recently that resonates with me is we're still in the first inning. It's a baseball analogy. There's 9 innings in a baseball game, and we're still in the first inning when it comes to this ecosystem. So it's still not too late.
What year was it when you first sort of got into crypto or crypto security, would you call it?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, the college roommate telling me about it was 2015, 2016. And then my reintroduction is 2019, 2020.
2019, 2020. I guess that's pretty similar. No, that's maybe a year before I started looking into the crypto space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you mentioned your love for music way back when you first got interested in tech. You still do a lot of music videos I saw on YouTube.
Yeah, I do. I'm actually releasing an album next, I don't know when this is going to come out, but May 26th. Yeah, music is just something that's always going to be a part of me, I think. And I think it's super healthy for anyone in any industry or field to like maintain hobbies or maintain passions that keep you going outside of maybe what you do day to day professionally. And for me, it's just kind of therapeutic, and it comes easy, but it does take some hard work too. But yeah, music is definitely a part of me, and we're seeing that crossover too, and the use cases with what Web3 is bringing, as far as addressing some of the pain points that come to music. So that's another big reason why I'm so invested in this space.
Nice. Yeah. You mentioned maintaining passions outside of what you do. I think that's really important. Do you think it helps with sort of burnout and that area side of things? Because if you get too focused on one thing for too long, your brain sort of just doesn't like it.
Yes, I think 100% it does, because it's not necessarily a turning off of the switch as far as like mentally being dialed in, right? It does take energy, but it's like working another side of your brain. And it's super healthy. boost balance. For some people, it's like going to the gym, right, is a passion, or going fishing is a passion of theirs. I think you definitely got to find that, whatever it is, just to be able to take your mind off things, because especially in this space, there is a lot that happens week to week, day to day, and it can be overwhelming to try to keep up with that at all times. So being able just to transition and just to shift your focus is just, I think, the best thing you can do for yourself.
So you did have previous security experience through your auditing at KPMG. Just comparing that with Web3, do you find there are any transferable skills that made it really easy for you to come over?
Yes, 100%. So as you mentioned, I worked in IT auditing. So we were responsible for testing and validating our clients' IT systems to ensure the completeness and accuracy of all their systems and the data that is being relied upon for financial reporting. So we focused on access, change management, SDLC, so system development lifecycle, implementation, and business processes. So understanding not only from a business end, but also from a technology end, how these systems are all interacting to, at the end of the day, spit out a financial report that is shared with investors, shareholders, the public. All that is coming from data that's being pulled and being manually maintained, automatically maintained as well too. So as far as kind of what I have seen as far as what carries over, and maybe I'll just do a compare and contrast. So if I think about the different phases within this sphere of IT auditing, so you have like the scoping phase. So in Web3, scoping is actually pretty easy compared to Web2 auditing. And when I say that, I mean all a protocol has to do is share the GitHub repo with the dependent contracts and provide docs and NatSpec testing, etc. And then your third-party vendor, whoever that is going to do the security or audit for you, is able to, with a couple clicks, get the access they need and get up to speed and understand from a scoping perspective what will go in and entail to provide a complete and accurate security review. In Web 2, because you have so many different systems that these companies are relying upon, it's not a one-click, here's our GitHub repo that they can share with you. It's many weeks of conversations. It's pulling in subject matter experts within your firm. So when I say we're your firm at like a KPMG, pulling in those subject experts for the different systems, whether that's Oracle, JDE, SAP. It really takes an all-hands-on-deck approach to do a proper scoping. And then the budgeting that goes in with that, it really is super detailed. And that's as far as like the scoping side. Then on the testing phase, so Web3, we are used to maybe 1 to 3 week time span of security reviews and testing that goes into looking over and reviewing this code. Whereas in Web2, we can be talking several months to a year that goes into performing testing and reviewing of the clients and the protocols. So there's a huge time difference, which can come for various reasons. And then from a reporting standpoint, in Web3, we just hand over an audit report, and that has all the findings from critical all the way to low. And it's super consolidated and one stop. And it's also sometimes shared with the public too, as far as like, here's what we found, as far as from bugs to the different findings. In Web 2, that's more closed in. Like, you're not going to find a security review report for like a company like Universal Music Group or Sony. That's going to be kept in-house, and that's only going to be shared within their IT departments, and the people that need to see it are going to be the ones that gets reported to. So that's kind of the difference between the two at the reporting phase. The mitigation, I think, is pretty interesting too. So oftentimes, at KPMG, we would find different exceptions and find different things that need remediation, whether they're critical, whether they're low in severity, and it'd really be showing and telling the client, here is the exceptions that we found. Here are some steps we might propose for you to mitigate it, but it's kind of on you to really fix it. And that's pretty much a translation of what happens in Web3 too, where you find those pain points, critical issues, that then it's really on the client. You want to see it through, that they do actually apply mitigations. And then you got to validate those mitigations. Same thing applies in Web2, and I think it's super important to be around for that. And then lastly, like the ongoing services and relationships, I think it's so crucial too, from a business standpoint. Companies in Web2 or Web3 are always trying to upsell services, like we can offer you monitoring, or we can offer you incident response, or you name it. There's more services that come within these companies, and it's about relationships and finding out what your client is maybe lacking and where they could get better, and providing them solutions. So I think that's also something that translates between the two. And I guess the next part of your question was the transferable skills. Specifically for someone in my role, I think the attention to detail is critical. You're dealing with a lot of information, you're dealing with a lot of people, so just being really acute to the intricacies that go into a security review, into an audit, is something not to take lightly. And then the risk analysis and problem solving, there's always going to be problems that come along the way. Scope might have to change, go live date might need to be pushed back, and it's all about hand-holding and understanding the issue and coming with a solution for that. And risk analysis is still true too. You need to be able to raise a red flag when something truly is not okay, and then be able to determine what is maybe an exception can be noted on, but it doesn't warrant like further steps. It is super important. Then the project and time management, I think, is critical too. Like I mentioned, especially in Web3, from an auditor's perspective, you're basically heads down diving into a protocol's code base for sprints. And after 2 weeks, you might have to dive into another one. And you're always supposed to be like the expert in the room. And the only way to be an expert is to take the time and due diligence to understand what you're going to be assessing. So I think being able to have that project and time management skill is really key too.
I can definitely relate to when you say scoping is a lot easier in the Web3 space compared to traditional IT and cybersecurity. Because I came from a pen testing background at a consultancy firm as well, and just setting up the pen tests compared to in Web3, where you're just given a GitHub repo and off you go. Like you have to, in traditional security, you have to set up the testing environment, you have to grab the credentials, the documentation, the scope. It's all it's a lot of work to just even get that started. And I guess that really helps with, in the Web3 space, you see a lot of solo auditors these days. They're essentially doing their own scoping and then their own work, but I don't think that would work quite as well in traditional cybersecurity, where the scoping and that kind of customer consultancy type of work is quite a big overhead.
Yeah, I don't think it definitely, it makes the process longer, and it definitely requires another set of credibility. There probably was a time, if you think back in like the early iterations of internet, and particularly like the late 1980s, where maybe there were, like, if we did our history analysis, I think that there might have been like solo auditors back then, before there were big firms that you could go out to and have them perform security reviews and perform audits. There has to be a book on that.
Yeah, you might be right there. Maybe something to look into, but yeah, that's a really interesting point. But like from what you see in the industry, like right now you've got solo auditors coming up, you've got independent firms, and then you've got like sort of DAOs like Coderina, we've got Spearbit also, all sort of competing in the same realm. How do you see this playing out in the next couple of years?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's going to be continued innovation. And when I say innovation, like we're just going to see different protocols, different firms, companies just experimenting because we still don't have the frameworks as far as like regulatory requirements. So in Web2 auditing, you have like SOX compliance, you have, because of the financial statement audits, you have all these regulatory frameworks that go into requiring and the specificities to like, how are these audits performed and what's supposed to be the end result. And right now we are kind of still painting that picture without any guidance from outside sources. So I think we're going to see continued innovation, and the amount of great talent that is coming into this space is only going to continue to grow. And the people that are the core teams of these platforms, the auditors and security researchers participating, it's only going to continue to grow. And I think within that, we just need to kind of stay true to the convictions and understand the reason why we got into this space in the first place, because I think very quickly it could go in a route that mirrors a lot of Web 2 and maybe a lot of the things that we don't necessarily like about Web 2 when it comes to the overall frameworks that are behind it, because I think we do have a chance to reshape it in a way that, yes, is still keeping end users' safety priority, but doing it in a way that's more efficient. So I think staying true to your ethos and your reason why is something that's going to be super important for anyone diving into this space. The amount of hacks, the amount of chaos, the amount of hiccups that are going to be along the way is also going to be rampant. But I think staying vigilant and not getting like discouraged is going to be a huge factor in that. And yeah, I'm just overall super excited for all the players in this arena, if you want to call it, to continue to shape this. And, you know, I'm a pretty optimistic person. So I think as long as we still have this general ethos of trying to reshape the future and reshape tech in a way that supports end users and supports the people that the next billion that we're trying to bring on, and hopefully have them feel safe when they're interacting with any crypto Web3 platform or protocol, whether it's DeFi, NFTs, it's going to be pivotal. So I think that's something we all have to keep in mind when we're doing what we do.
Yeah, 100%. I think preventing hacks is absolutely critical for adoption in this space because, you know, like comparing it back to traditional security again, in traditional security, you're not really talking about monetary actual money on the line, right? You're just talking about maybe user personal information, leaks, that type of stuff. But in the Web3 space, we're literally fighting with users directly having financial impact from these hacks. So the impact definitely feels a lot bigger. I guess this is why I'm sort of attracted to this field, because the impact is bigger and it just feels like more at stake in everything that you do. Do you find that the case?
Yes, and that's exactly what I tell people whenever I'm telling people outside of Web3, like, hey, what is it that you do, or what insecurity, like, why is it important? Why should we care? I exactly explain that same situation that we're in, right? The battle in Web 2 was over data, and data is still going to always be gold. Well, that's personal information, that could be credit cards, that could be health, you name it, where you live. That's all super sensitive stuff, and super, someone, if they are a black hat hacker, was able to get in a system and able to get that information and then go to, but they have to go to the black market and then, put it up for a ransom. There's so many other steps that go to like maybe getting the gold, Whereas in Web3 and with blockchain technology, the honeypot is right there. It's in the code. So that's like the big difference. And I think that's when it starts to click for other people. And they're like, oh, I understand. And that's noble. And I didn't even know that existed. And then they kind of get curious and it starts to click for them. So I think exactly the way you framed it, it resonates with me too.
And I guess that's why there's sort of more money in this field as well, comparing to traditional security, because firms are more willing to pay that money for doing audits and just putting up massive bug bounties. I saw Immunify recently, I think just a couple of days ago, put up a 15 million bounty, which is just unheard of, absolutely crazy. So that's definitely a motivating factor for people to get into this space as well.
Yes. And it's still the first inning. So that 15 million in X amount of years, who knows?
Yeah. And you also mentioned about your traditional experience at a KPMG, big auditing firm. You had to learn the tech stack very quickly, which is quite comparable to doing Web3 audits. Basically, you're jumping in, you have to learn the code base very quickly, and then you need to find potential vulnerabilities in that code base. Like for me, sometimes when I'm doing that, like almost like not all the time, but if you do that for long enough and you look at a lot of code bases, sometimes you just get the feeling of imposter syndrome a lot, I feel, at least for me, because you're just trying to, you go in and then you're sort of like the newbie when you first start looking at the code and nothing makes sense, and then you have to very quickly get yourself up to speed and actually be at the level where you can actually turn around and give advice to the authors of that code. Yeah, I guess that's something that I sort of think about when I perform audits.
Oh my gosh, that was something that, in retrospect, I'm like, how did people trust my team? How did they? We have this kind of credibility, whether you're at a firm or you are a solo auditor. You have this chance to like get your credibility and your reputation, and I think that's a big part of why people can trust you and trust your services. But yeah, when you are diving into testing someone's code and reviewing it and offering them advice, when that person has been so close to it, and whether they're an analyst or whether they are the CTO, right? You have to wear this hat that, okay, I'm also just as knowledgeable and I have things to offer. So it's just up to the client to also be receptive to that. And I think that's the beauty of what we do in the space we navigate in, is for the most part, there's no real pushback. Like, everyone is here to just get better. And I think as long as you kind of have that in mind, that at the end of the day, the protocols you work with are just trying to get better and get stronger within their architecture, within their systems. And no advice is bad advice. And just kind of getting that confidence. But for sure, it can feel like that. It can feel like that. But I don't think there's a way to even like skip that feeling. You kind of have to go through that. Then as you gain, experience, then you really do truly become the expert that you are.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a lot of people who get into tech have that feeling, imposter syndrome, and maybe it's a bit worse in consulting and auditing, because you're essentially giving that advice and learning systems very quickly all the time, and I guess that develops a lot of self-learning habits, which I think is really crucial in Web3. You mentioned previously that you had to like go out there, do your own research, and learn a lot of new tech stacks, essentially independently, right? So that's, I think, is really crucial when it comes to Web3, when there's not a lot of information in the space yet. It's still sort of building up. So a lot of the stuff, you're doing your own experimentation, you're reading blogs, doing a lot of self-directed research in this space. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's bad, because for people who are just trying to learn, maybe they are sort of lost in what direction that they can go in terms of gaining this knowledge. So what are your thoughts on the open sharing of knowledge, and sometimes there are also paid courses as well that fit into that knowledge sharing space. So what are your opinions on those?
Yeah, so I believe this ecosystem was built upon a principle of knowledge sharing in an open format. So we've gotten so much better at compiling lists, frameworks, and libraries that are easily being shared, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on GitHub, whether that's on YouTube. I think that has been something that really shines bright, and none of that information is necessarily being gatekept by a paywall, regardless. But however, I do see, like in any hyper-skilled market where you have to specialize, there is an opening for participants to monetize upon this and the ability to train and educate people. This isn't something that's unique to Web3 security per se. In Web2, there are infinite amounts of paid certifications and courses that people have to undergo. Like I mentioned, my father, like he had to get many certifications in firewall security. And he had to pay for those. He had to pay for the books. He had to pay for the training courses. And that's something I witnessed firsthand. I think there is a balance that can coexist, because there is that reality too that there are people that are entering this space that when they first land on Twitter or they first land on GitHub, it's like, where do I go? What's the right path? Because there's so much alpha out there that a paid course can navigate them to that faster. Now, it's the same end goal. At the end of the day, you're trying to get skilled and specialized at whatever it is. And in this perspective, we're talking about Web3 security. So I think there's going to be a balance between that. It's going to be interesting if there starts to become like certifications. We'll see how that plays out. But I think it's okay. I think as long as the courses that are being provided are actually, giving people the tools and giving them the what they bought it for, right? They're not feeling like they got short-term from diving into that paid course. Then there shouldn't be a problem with that. And I also do realize that there are people that have gained their expertise in this space, worked really hard, and they also have families. They also have rent. They have real things they got to, pay for, and being able to provide their skills and provide their expertise to people that want to learn. And if they choose to do so in a paid format, I don't see a reason to necessarily shame or bash that. But I do want to emphasize that, I believe this ecosystem was built upon the principle of, shared knowledge and in the open format. And I think that's something that we should keep consistent to.
Yeah, I do feel the sharing of knowledge is very generous in this space, more so than traditional IT or security, because I don't know, maybe because it's very new and it's very lucrative, so people don't really feel the need to sort of go that education route just yet. But it'll be really interesting to see once when this space matures, what sort of comes out the other end, because I definitely do see potential of sort of certifications and that kind of thing coming in sort of like traditional IT security, right? I also went through the certification arc when I was in traditional security, like going through all the like Security Plus, OSCP, and that kind of stuff.
There you go.
So it's definitely like once the industry matures, it's much faster to sort of gain credibility when you go after that certification compared to when you're doing sort of self-learning.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, back to the credibility point. Having that certification, having that paid course that you completed does offer a sense of credibility. So there's value to that.
And what are your advice to newbies who are sort of just coming into the space? Do you have a list of top learning resources that you recommend people go through?
Yeah, there are definitely some great lists that are out there that I've kind of bookmarked on my own tabs on my browser. But I think kind of the steps I would say is first thing is follow the gold. And when I say gold, follow the Twitter folks, the people in this space that are sharing their firsthand experiences, their firsthand audits, their firsthand findings openly and sharing this on Twitter. It seems to be the platform that most of this is happening on. So you find one of these people, look at who they're following, and then you're going down a rabbit hole. And I think that is a great way to not only understand the frameworks and the methodologies and the best practices and get perspective on that, but then just kind of continue to keep a pulse on this industry as a whole. So there are many people I would shout out, like the C. Michelles, Hari. I think Sturmy had a great finding the other day that was posted on Twitter and has a great thread there. Patrick D. It's a long list, but I think that's like a first thing. Second thing that it's kind of really coming back. Obviously with COVID, we weren't able to attend conferences. But now I think the conference scene is so great. And it's one of the things that within this past year that has been really good for me to get that experience firsthand. There's so many good Ethereum-based conferences around the world that I would highly suggest, even if you're not able to get a ticket, find your way to be in that city during that week or weekend, participate in that hackathon, meet the folks that are in this space, and also be open to the ideas that are introduced there. And by attending conferences physically, it's still a foolproof way at starting to navigate and kind of filter through all the alpha that's out there. Another thing is, get your voice out there and get your ideas out there. It really doesn't hurt. One thing I think that I did that helped me was I started like a mirror blog page, and there's not too many posts, but there's quite a few that I've kind of authored out there that as I'm kind of thinking through this space, thinking through like my thoughts through it, I think it's been so fruitful to kind of like document that and journal that in a way that hopefully can be passed along to others as they get into the space or already in the space. To kind of, shape the perspective in a positive way. So I think getting your voice out there, getting your ideas out there is also really good when you're first starting off. So join those DAOs, join those Discord servers, hop in those Twitter spaces because they happen. And then once you're in there, don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, and also offer your 2 cents. I think that goes a long way. I would say those are like the best set of advices that I can give for anyone that's new that's jumping into the space.
Yeah, definitely like following the right people on Twitter, talking to people in the industry, either on Twitter or conferences. You get to absorb a lot of the new stuff which is coming out, and that's really important to keep up with the industry. Same with traditional IT, right? You have to keep up with what's going on, but I think it's even more so in the Web3 space because everything's still very new. Have you got any, say, top Discord channels that you want to recommend people joining just off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think for people just getting into space, I think like Securium is a great place to get your feet wet. Then obviously the Code Arenas, the Spearbits, ETH Security also has a Discord as well. I would kind of I know there's many more. There's like Sherlock as well. And I know there's several more that I'm missing at this moment as far as like Discord servers. But they are definitely out there. I'm not big into like the Telegram groups. For some reason, I really do like Discord and the way that's set up. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really that into the Telegram groups either. Discord is, I think, where most of the activity is at in terms of Web3 security, at least.
Exactly. Telegram, it's great for maybe group conversations or one-on-one chats, but for having like a big group think, it's not necessarily the best platform.
Yeah, yeah. We mentioned Spearbit a couple of times in this conversation. Just for the benefit of people who don't know what Spearbit is, can you give us a brief intro of what is Spearbit and what is your role currently working there?
Yeah, so Spearbit is basically a community of security researchers, by security researchers, open to the best in as far as talent and open to the best as far as protocols when it comes to the clients that are being serviced and being worked with. It really is just a great hub. Back to our top point about learning resources, the seminars that are hosted on there, the different groups related to research, whether it's MEV, EVM, Solidity. There's so many different niches in there too that links are being shared, conversations are being had. So that at the ethos is what it is. And just providing a safe space for all that great talent and then all those great protocols to kind of interact. And yeah, it leads to awesome security reviews. It leads to great audits, and really just helping shape the narrative behind Web3 security in a positive sense. And hopefully being able to play a small role in helping onboard and help the next billion users feel safe as they onboard onto Web3 and interact with these protocols and don't get rugged.
Nice. And I've noticed that a lot of the top independent security auditors in the space either end up joining Spearbit or collaborating with Spearbit at some point. Why do you think that is? And how do you think Spearbit is, what do you think they're doing differently to sort of attract the best decentralized talent?
Yeah, I think it really is, proof in the pudding as far as the quality of reviews that are being offered and the findings. It kind of starts with a small nucleus, and then through word of mouth, that's how it's been able to sort of spread and be able to gain that credibility and gain the kind of attention from the right people and from people that all really have the same ethos of trying to make this space better and make this space safer. So I think as far as like what it's offering, it's pretty clearly laid out. It's offering a way for security researchers to go from like a junior all the way to a lead and hopefully be able to put you in a position to really thrive in this space from a security expertise perspective. And yeah, by offering resources as far as seminars and offering people that are always active and trying to offer their knowledge and offer their learning so that you can also get better. It's kind of a big reason why it's been able to attract some of the best in this space from not only the security researcher perspective, but also from the client perspective, because they also want to be in the know too. They also want to have a security mindset when they're putting together their code bases and their protocols, and they want to be like one step ahead. So I think that's kind of the role that it's playing and the reason why it's able to be attracting some of the best in the space.
Mm. And what would you give as advice for people who are wanting to potentially join Spearbit? Are there any upcoming intakes? Because I did see a lot of people recently post on Twitter they've gone through the Spearbit assessment and they're really proud that they passed that assessment and so forth. What's sort of the intake process and the timeline on that?
Yeah, so I think for anyone looking to join, it's all about continuing to upskill. So there is a promotion proposal that was published in, I want to say, October of last year, that pretty much lays out from a specification standpoint, like here's the roles and here's the responsibilities at each kind of step of the way. And I think that's been really helpful in painting like a framework for those folks that are new to the space and like figuring out, okay, what do I have to have under my belt as far as skills and domains to be able to like thrive in this space. So that's pretty kind of clearly laid out and detailed. And, the team dedicated a lot of time to put that together and make it all encompassing so that, people have resources and have a roadmap to achieve success. yes, there was an opening for new security researchers to join. At this moment, I believe it's still open. So yeah, if you have the skills and kind of gone through Securium, kind of gone through Code Arena and Sherlock, and done really and exhausted like what you can do as far as like a solo security researcher, then this is like the next best step for you to kind of continue to grow and flourish.
Yeah, yeah. I think you bring up a really good point when after you've done your solo stuff, for example, on Code Arena with those audit contests, the next step is really starting to work with the top security researchers and sort of learning their methodologies as you do an actual audit, which is just really invaluable experience to take you to that next level, whether that's joining an audit firm or joining something like Spearbit, where you do a collaborative audits. You always have like lead security researchers as part of the team for the audit, right? So people who are junior can sort of join and learn from their experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So definitely great option for people to consider if they want to sort of upskill. How do they go about applying? Do they just go on the website and put in an application?
Yeah, going on the website. If the link is not there to put in an application, then it is not open. So when you see this, yeah, that's my advice and the reason why. But yeah, submit an application. I mean, also by attending these conferences and going to like a Spearbit event per se, that's another way to like get your foot in the door, get introduced. Because at the end of the day, it's not meant to be kind of gate kept. It's just to make sure that the incentives and make sure that the qualifications of the people that are being brought in are really adding and really have the same mindset. What's been so great over the past year or so is being able to meet, folks like yourself and so many other people from all over the world who do have this one shared common denominator, which is trying to make this space safer and more secure. And, I think that's one thing that's been really refreshing when I compare my Web2 experience with what's been my experience in Web3 so far, is the genuine excitement and curiosity. And you just can't bottle that up. It's something that I think we should just definitely continue to cultivate and continue to foster if we're going to see this go in the trajectory of where we want it to go and not revert back to maybe the faults of Web2 and continue to grow this into really what is supposed to be a decentralized way of the world and open up the floodgates to who knows what.
Yeah. So I guess as a big picture, where do you see this industry and Spearbit heading to in the next couple of years? I do see there's potential for more talent to come over from Web2 security. There's a lot of people, from that space starting to dabble around with a Code Arena and Immunify, and some of them have transitioned very quickly into Web3. So where do you see this whole thing sort of headed?
Oh, well, I can definitely say there's going to be a plethora of code. There's going to be a plethora of protocols that are innovating, only going to add more complexity. The libraries are only going to get bigger. So the need for more and more folks that can operate in this space and do it really well is going to remain consistent. I truly do believe that. And then, yeah, I think for any Web3 security company or platform, it's really just going to be about how do you cultivate that and how do you make this the space where everyone wants to be at, and then offer a service, offer solutions that are able to drive clients to also interact on the platform and with the company. So I think that's something that's gonna be really interesting to watch develop over the next year, 2 years. I think also what's going to be interesting too is the in real life interactions of this too. Like I mentioned, the conferences and all that. It's going to be just it's going to be a time that mirrors maybe the early 80s, early 90s, when it comes to the teams and the founders and the minds that are operating in this space. And I'm just really excited to see how it unfolds and just play a part in hopefully steering that in the trajectory that we all want, which is a safer and more secure environment and ecosystem that, yes, the next billion plus people can onboard to and join us, you know?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm really excited just to see how this whole thing plays out. And it's really great that we're in this industry, right? Because sometimes it doesn't really matter. I think it's a quote from Warren Buffett. It doesn't matter how hard you're rowing, it matters what boat you're on. So I think we have chosen an industry that has really a big growth potential, and it's going to be really exciting to see how this whole thing turns out.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's really important to have resources like the one you're building out here on YouTube. And I remember the first time I reached out to you. I think you maybe had like under 1,000 subscribers or something, but I was watching your videos and I was like, this guy gets it. Like, this is such a need too, to also offer these like one-on-one conversations where you kind of get into the minds of folks operating in this space. And yes, I love a good Twitter thread, but I also love hearing a face or hearing a voice and hearing those thoughts audio wise too. I love podcasts. I love music. So that's also something that I think is so needed. And I'm super thankful on behalf of everyone in this space, super thankful for what you've been building and continue to build.
Thanks. Yeah, really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on. It's been really great hearing your experience and your journey and how you found your way into this Web3 security space. Have you got any sort of final advice for people who are interested in coming into Web3? Maybe specifically for people who are sort of in that, who were in your shoes, maybe, at the moment where they're thinking about coming over, they're not sure how can their skills transition. What would be your advice for people like that?
Yeah. So for any business or technical minded folks, I think the advice I'll give will resonate with both of them. But I think taking the time to find which kind of vertical within the space you really want to get invested in. And the reason why I say that is because if you try to be an expert of NFTs, DeFi, bridges, and all these verticals, it can be tough to really get deep, as deep as you need to be to really be an expert. So security is one of these verticals. So I think really just take the time to figure out, okay, you love Web3, you love crypto and what it offers and what it brings, but there's so many other verticals that you can really focus in on and try to just find that to start off. And then whether that is getting a job or joining a DAO or just being active in researching and learning about that, I think that's like a great step. And that's advice I'd give for anyone. Because there is a lot of information out there, and it's truly hard to be an expert at all of this. So I think just find the domain that you're really curious about, dive into that first, get your feet wet, and then you can transition. You can this ecosystem is only continuing to grow and cross over, and like the future is still to be written. So I think that's a good place to kind of start off, and your skills should be transferable if you're transitioning from the Web2 world to Web3. But do be open to the new ideas that are being brought here. And yes, the infancy that is Web3, because it's not that mature yet. So the processes and the architectures that you'll interact with, yes, might not be the most mature from where you're coming from, but that's the cool part. We're able to shape that. So that's my best advice.
Great. Sounds awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, Moise. That was really great to hear your perspective on things.
Thank you so much, Andy. And it was a pleasure to be on.